Season's greetings. My name, Masachaba Baloyi. I'm the CEO and founder of IndiePath Human Capital. We are your guide to building and sustaining a high-performance culture. Welcome to the Moments of Impact. Our guest today, Mr. Mpho Makwana, his life purpose is to be a trusted counselor to world-class leaders who seek to leave the world better than they found it. He's the chairperson of Epitome Investments, Nedbank, as well as Eskom, a mammoth of a task aimed at bringing meaningful change. I don't know about you, but I respect anybody who dares to respond to an unpopular, perhaps impossible ask, a role filled of criticism. Mr. Makwana has demonstrated attributes of an attuned leader. He's bold, courageous, daring, but most importantly, he cares, assuring us of the need to have the best minds working for and partnering with the public sector. Thank you so much, sir, for honoring our engagement. How do you do?
Thank you very much, Masachaba. Season's greetings to you too.
It's such an honor and privilege. What do you consider to be the makings of a good leader?
Well, I guess some of the words you used from Dr. Ruel Khoza's attuned leadership model would form one perspective. My compass in responding to that question comes from a definition of a leader, firstly from Joel Barker. Joel Barker is a futurist who defines a leader as someone you choose to follow to a place you wouldn't go by yourself. The second part comes from Madiba, who taught us that a leader is most impactful if he's capable of leading from behind on several occasions, and particularly important at the right occasions, so that those who look to him or her for followership, for leadership, they feel that they've done it by themselves without the leader. The third dimension from an ethical point of view, in terms of my commitment to leading from a principle of zero harm, comes from my spiritual foundation. The spiritual founder of my faith used to teach us that in all of us, we are an embodiment of the great spirit of the Creator. So you carry the Spirit of God in you. Everybody in this room carry that spirit. So you can never ill-treat a person that you can touch and feel and see, and then go to your place of worship at the end of the week and say, no, I'm worshiping, and yet you've just hurt somebody, deliberately so, in the course of the week. So that would be my sense of what my anchor is in terms of good leadership.
Now we're uncharted territories. What attributes do you think one needs to develop to survive as is?
To survive as is. I think the key thing that all leaders, and in fact what distinguishes good leaders from great leaders know that the primary requirement of surviving, but I would say let's stretch it a little bit and say thriving, is to be yourself. You've got to show up as your authentic self, and guard against what we see a lot, people masking themselves as someone else. So it's the fine difference between being a role player and being an actual leader. When you're a role player, you are appointed to whatever the title of the role is that you're fulfilling. And as one of my mentors once said, you end up finding yourself that the job becomes you. You should be yourself regardless what role you fulfill.
Wow. You should be yourself regardless what role you fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
How do you hold those you lead accountable?
you first have to have a sense of self-accountability yourself. You need to be truthful to yourself, because only if you ensure that wherever you are, you show up truthfully and you always hold yourself to the highest standard, only then will you be able to hold others accountable. So the proverbial thing of leading by example, the proverbial thing of walking the talk, is what is required. To be able to hold others accountable, you must both lead the way, show the way, and act the way.
Lead the way, show the way, and act.
Mm-hmm. So you can't say do it. And, the extension of Joel Parker's definition of a leader, someone you choose to follow, it ends with you choose to follow to a place you wouldn't go by yourself. And the reason this is that the environment we work and live in is complex. In some of your introductions, you said sometimes you may find yourself in a tough role where there's lots of negative energy because of the reputation, because of whatever it is that make people criticize people fulfilling that role. So not many people will operate freely in such an environment. But even in the most well-run commercial businesses, for instance, if I look at the role I fulfill as chair of Nedbank, Nedbank, in my book, is one of the best-run organizations in the country. Perhaps I would dare say it would rank quite high among some of the best-run companies on the planet, because the team, generations of CEOs of Nedbank, especially starting back to Tom Boardman, Mike Brown, with whom I work now, have understood the power of creating and shaping purposeful organizations, where the people that work in that organization feel that they can mirror their sense of purpose in the organization they work for. But even in such an environment, because it's complex, it's competitive, there's four major banks in South Africa. Yes, there's smaller disruptive players, but there's four major banks in this country. And so you're constantly competing for market share. It is a regulated business. You have to constantly make sure you are in compliance with all forms of banking regulations. You never know how your customers behave one day to another. You have to ensure that they stay within their credit mandates and all that. So those are examples of things that create complexity. Even if you picked, say, a telco, you have got multi-million subscribers. Some people are there to cause mischief as hackers, as cyber criminals. So there's always something that causes disruption and causes complexity. And so that's why people would rather not be the manager, but be managed. That's why people would rather be the follower than the leader. It's more complex now in an environment, for instance, like an Eskom, where you're dealing with excessive demands every day. So that's why a leader is someone you choose to follow to a place that you wouldn't go by yourself, because it's tough, it's complex.
Do you remember a moment in your career that most impacted?
There are many of those moments, Maschava. In fact, there's a word for it. The Greek mythologists call it Kairos moments.
Oh, yes.
A Kairos moment is a life-changing moment. But if I look back, I think most of my life has been always about dealing with Kairos moments. When I finished my first degree, I was 20 years old. And when I started school, I was the youngest in class. I started school as in sub A, aged 4.5, because my parents sent me to school, firstly because there was no play school or preschool or creche. So they felt if I walked together with other kids to school, it will get me accustomed to going to school. So that by the time I'm 6, at that time you had to be 6 to do the first grade, then I would have been accustomed to going to school. So 4 months later, they were told, no, you're wasting his time, enroll him.
Oh, wow.
I was 21 years, well, I was almost 21 when I started working. So there's always a joke in the family. My first car was a Fiat Uno. And I could afford it with my own salary, but the day I bought it, I had to call my father because I was not yet 21 to come and sign surety to say I'll be able to take care of it. If you fast forward, in 2010, at age 40, I became the youngest chair of Eskom ever in my first tenure as chair of Eskom. In my current tenure at Nedbank, I'm the youngest ever chair of Nedbank. I became chair of Nedbank at 51. And today again at 52, second time round at Eskom, I'm still, besides myself, I'm still the youngest chair Eskom has ever had. So having been pushed to perhaps achieve early in life in itself has been a rolling Kairos moment for me.
Wow. Many firsts.
Yeah, I suppose, yes. In 1996, I became the first director for Equal Opportunities. So if you've got qualms with the Employment Equity Act, this is the architect.
What are you reading?
Yeah, so the book I'm reading now is a book by Manfred Kertz de Vries. He's a Dutch leadership academic who's just retired, in fact, long retired. But in 2009, he wrote this book called The Character of Leadership. And before this book, the first book that he wrote, so this is a sequel of 2 books. The first one was Leaders on the Couch, where he started off in his office as and when leaders came to him seeking advice, coaching, mentorship, he would then put them on the couch. And he did that as part of his leadership development programs because he felt leaders need to reflect on who they are, on their sense of authenticity. Then the book evolved further into what he called the neurotic organization, where he was advancing the view that all of us as human beings have neurosis, neurotic tendencies that shape how we respond as leaders. And so the one most profound, which relates to us also as a country that came into democracy because of having had struggle, he uses the example that any country that has had struggle, the neurosis of the character of the leaders of that government will most likely show a compulsive neurosis. And this comes from the fact that whether you look at Cuba, whether you look at in the Mau Mau in Kenya, in our case with the armed struggle and people going to prison, to thrive as a leader who emerges from struggle into government, you would have had to always survive either in hiding, in exile, or somewhere in the bush as a guerrilla, or even worse, even if you were in the country, you've always had to watch your back because there would either have been someone out to eliminate you, someone out to arrest you, someone out to destroy you. And so the compulsive neurosis is one where you constantly lead with the notion that someone is out to get me. And so there's many organizations that he cites that show that commercial organizations. And then there's other types of neurosis that we don't have time to go into today. But the essence of it is that leaders must then be self-conscious of that, find ways of ensuring that they don't transfer that neurosis in a negative way onto the organizations, and in this instance, even the governments that they lead. The Character of Leadership book, published in 2009, talks to a slightly different phenomenon, where leaders must constantly reflect back to their childhood to ensure that they do not do what he calls transference. It's a leadership development term that talks about sometimes people taking negative energy from their childhood, So, for instance, in the township, you may have an aunt or even a mother, father, slapping you in your wrist and say, you know, "Stlaila kwena skaira," this and this and this. And so that "Stlaila kwena," you little fool, brands you in a certain way, because the day you lead others, chances are you may tend to think you are better than them, or you might see the young Stlaila kwena in them and start treating them and applying transference of someone who belittled you as a child and start belittling people who look to you for leadership. And you then wonder, because they say people don't leave organizations. When people resign, they leave managers. So 90% it has to do with whatever they've had to endure under a manager, applying transference behavior onto them unconsciously. And so those are the interesting insights that I'm reflecting on now in this book.
That is so impactful. We must be conscious and we must heal how we were socialized so we can be better people and therefore be better leaders. How do you unwind? You've done lots of... At 40, you were chairman. Did you have a little bit of fun? Do you have a little bit of fun?
Yes, I do. I've been playing tennis since I was 9. I play Scrabble online, so you're welcome to challenge me to an online Scrabble game. My spiritual home on a Sabbath is my sanctuary, so I try my best not to miss a Sabbath service. And then, of course, most importantly, my family.
Thank you so much, family, for sharing your dad, husband with us. Truly, he's phenomenal. How would you like to be remembered?
Where you started. My life purpose is to be a trusted counselor to world-class leaders who seek to leave the world better than they found it. I hope I'll be remembered as someone who made the world better for other leaders.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mokwana.
Thank you.
As we draw the curtain on a challenging 2022, and we look to the horizons as we usher in the new year, I'd like to call on Karl Barth to remind us, and I quote, "Although no one can go back and make a brand new start, anyone can start from now and make a brand new ending." I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. My name, Masachaba Baloyi. I'm the CEO and founder of IndyPath Human Capital. We are your guide to building and sustaining a high-performance culture.